Welcome to this edition of Closer Look here on member-supported 90.1 WABE, Atlanta's Choice for NPR. I'm Rose Scott.
And I'm Jim Burris. Last Sunday's announcement came as a surprise to many. The Army Corps of Engineers said it, in fact, would not approve an easement necessary to route the Dakota Access Pipeline through a key Native American tribal area. Energy Transfer Partners wants to pipe oil from North Dakota through South Dakota and Iowa to a shipping point in Illinois. To do that, it's proposed a 1,200-mile, $3.8 billion pipeline. Now, that giant straw would go through the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, which has prompted the tribe and many of its supporters to resist the plan in a very public way.
In North Dakota, the proposed pipeline would cross the Missouri River, which is the tribe's only source of drinking water. It also crosses 9 major tributaries and long protected land belonging to the Hunkapak Sioux. Now, Standing Rock, as it's come to be known, gained the national spotlight last month when police used a water cannon and rubber bullets on protesters. Our guests to start today's program were there to see all of this firsthand. Tomas Kemper is General Secretary of the United Methodist Church's General Board of Global Ministries, and Mary Andreolli, Executive Director of Communications for Global Ministries. They're joining us in studio. Now, this is the Worldwide Mission and Development Agency of the United Methodist Church. It's based here in Atlanta. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary, we'll start with you. Describe for us what it was like to be at Standing Rock amid all of this that was going on.
Well, if I can speak to Sunday, the events on Sunday, if you can imagine standing on this bluff and overlooking teepees and tents and trailers, really for as far as the eye can see, amidst so many people from all around the world standing in prayer. And behind us, you hear the sound of the drums, the sacred drums of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota people. And all that while, we're asked to pray, stand and pray, stand and pray. And suddenly to hear this announcement that the easement has been denied and the permit has been denied, and to watch people encircle Chief Arvol Looking Horse and to begin to cheer, it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And although I certainly don't want to speak for Indigenous people at all, the word that kept coming to mind was rebirth, awakening, this reawakening, as 700 Indigenous nations gathered together for the first time in all of history.
Tomas, let's talk about that energy and why you all wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, the United Methodist Church, from its beginning with John Wesley in the 18th century England, has been involved in social issues. This is part of who we are as a church. John Wesley fought slavery, worked for prison reform, and created even food banks for the poor. So this has been our DNA. The Native American solidarity is something we have struggled with. And in 2012, our General Conference, which is the highest body, decision-making body of the United Methodist Church, had an act of repentance for the healing with the indigenous people around the world. And we started, as this event took place in Kemper in Florida, with the Native Americans here in the United States. And we said that repentance and recognition of our involvement in the genocide and in the persecution of indigenous people is something which we need to do in order to heal our relationships. So our solidarity at this moment in the Standing Rock and in this pipeline question is really part of this overall solidarity with Native Americans and Indigenous people.
One might think that there would be a huge sigh of relief after Sunday's announcement that the Army Corps of Engineers would not issue the necessary permits and easement for the project to go forward, at least as planned. But that's not really the case at all. People are still concerned. They're still protesting. They're still in solidarity. Kind of tell me what you make of that, Mary.
I think that I think it's important to of course acknowledge that this is a time of celebration and joy, and at the very same time, almost a call for us to remain vigilant. The reason for that is that the next course of action would be for the EPA to do the study, the environmental impact study, to determine how the pipeline will be rerouted. But that doesn't solve the problem that exists for the pipeline being installed in the first place. my understanding is that downstream, 18 million people are dependent on the water for the Missouri River. And so this still remains an issue that we will need to be mindful of and continue to monitor.
And did you all talk to the pipeline company? Did they have an active role in all of this that was going on up there?
We did not. We did not talk to the pipeline company. I will tell you that something that my understanding is that came from the pipeline company was continuous surveillance that included helicopters flying overhead at very low levels, particularly during the time of gatherings, so that we could not hear each other. So I would say a presence, a conscious presence, although we did not have direct communication with them.
Do you see that as harassment? Do you believe that was their motive?
I would say, for me personally, that I saw this as harassment, yes.
As a faith-based institution, and often you all stay out of political issues or even issuing statements on political issues. Is this a political issue as well for you? First question.
I'm going to actually defer to Thomas on this one as the head of our organization.
Life is political. Life cannot be lived in a vacuum, and our faith cannot be lived in a vacuum. For us, of course, we are not partisan political. We are not supporting one party or one government or one institution. I always say the gospel of Jesus Christ is always more than one nation, one country, one culture. And we have to be critical and pro-life in all these situations. So for us, it's really a stand for the life and for the access to water. Water was given to us by God as our creator. So for us, standing up for clean water in this situation, but we have projects with indigenous communities in Guatemala or with people in India and Pakistan, in the occupied Palestinian territories. All there are access to water becomes a very critical issue. And many people say it is already and will be even more reason for wars and violent conflicts all around the world. So I think this issue is part of a wider pattern we see in the world where access to water is a matter of life.
Right after this decision was announced, House Speaker Paul Ryan tweeted, quote, "This is a big government decision-making at its worst. I look forward to putting this anti-energy presidency behind us." You just talked about that you don't support any one administration, but are you hopeful that you all can have a role in some type of dialogue or bringing other people to the table to come to some conclusion here, or compromise, rather?
We hope there is really some possibility for a compromise here, because this is a matter from a Christian perspective of God's creation, of caring for God's creation. We have just commissioned 45 earth keepers, as we call them, the Sunday before last here at Grace Church in Atlanta, people who work in their communities around the world to care for God's creation, very much based in their communities, and they do it because that's what their faith tells them to do. So we hope to be part of this movement, and we are looking for compromises, of course, and we want energy for the poor, and we want food for the poor, and that needs energy. There's no doubt about it.
A moment ago, Mary described for us the scene where there were just hundreds of folks who were not necessarily affiliated with the tribe there in solidarity and support. What is it about Standing Rock, do you think, that made this a rallying call?
I would say that it was very clear that the Native American people that were there initially, I would say before many more people came, that they were protecting something that is important to all of us. They are protecting the water. And because of what happened on November 20th, and when the media took notice and the word started getting out, I think that really planted the seed in people's minds that this is an issue that is bigger than Native American peoples. It's for all of us, and something that we need to pay attention to and that we need to think about. As Thomas has said, water, and as Native American people say, first and foremost, water is life. And so when I think about the 18 million people that are downstream, and I think about the people in Flint, Michigan, and I think about the people in Georgia, this is an ongoing struggle. We're all connected in this.
You all talked about the importance of why it was important for the church to be involved here, and currently we're in a climate where there are a lot of issues that the nation is grappling with. We've been talking all week about we now live in a divided nation because of the campaign, and you think about the tensions among the police and law enforcement in certain communities. So how do you all gauge what you need to focus on or get involved in? Because there's a lot happening in this country right now.
Yeah, for instance, this question of the indigenous people is something which we not have only here, but for instance, the Methodist Church is very strong in the Philippines.
Sure.
And the Lumat people there, our Native American executive has just been to the Philippines a few weeks ago to stand with the Lumat people there who fight for their survival and their rights and for access to food and to their own fields which are being taken away from them. So very often the issues we get involved are brought to us through our own church members and through our global connections as a global church. And here in Atlanta, we have in our staff people from over 30 countries. So together we try to discern what is the next thing we have to tackle as global ministries and as the United Methodist Church.
So can you do that just on a local level, or do you have to go outside and see what else is happening? I mean, you talked about what's happening not only here in this country, but around the world. But in each city, do you all come together and say, we all need to come together on this? Or here locally, you can make that decision and then go out to the Dakotas?
No, what is happening is that we have in the Methodist Church, our annual conferences all around the world, and the conference have the ultimate responsibility to make the decisions where they want to get involved in their respective countries. But as global ministries, our responsibility is to facilitate, to connect with them, and to help them in their respective struggles. And they may look very different depending on what part of the world that struggle is taking place, what governments, what political freedom or non-freedom and persecution is happening there. So all this we try to coordinate from Atlanta, but our advantage is that people from these regions are sitting together and kind of balancing the views from the different regions and listening to each other as they discern the next steps.
So Thomas, tell me what the conversation was like leading up to the decision to get involved in this.
The conversation was really that we had our Chair Bon Canel, who will also be at the press conference here on Monday. He is our executive for Native American Ministries, and he has been all over the United States since 2012, when we had the Act of Repentance as United Methodist Church, to do local acts of repentance. So we had over 20 conferences all around the country that did act of repentance for their regions, with their tribes in that region, looking and researching what happened to those indigenous people in their area. And out of this came the demand, the question, and said, so what do we do now that we have Standing Rock, and how do we react? And then our people who are involved in water and sanitation, they said, this is what we do in other parts of the world. Shouldn't we be concerned about clean water and access to clean water and conservation of clean water in this part of the United States? So our WASH people, water and sanitation people, and our indigenous people came together on this and really drove us into a stronger statement and engagement here.
And Mary, I'm curious, has there been any pushback from within the organization, the church?
Oh, I haven't seen pushback at all, no. As a matter of fact, we've seen engagement. Well, my understanding, and I wanted to be able to meet more of these folks that are there, but hundreds of United Methodists from across the United States have been at Standing Rock since the very beginning. We have a missionary who landed at this about the same time that we did, who immediately went to Standing Rock and became engaged in what has become a vibrant community, and started doing volunteer work and working in the kitchen and bringing in supplies. And so we haven't seen any pushback at all. We've seen lots of people who want to invest in this in all sorts of ways. And
what was the feedback from the indigenous people there, the tribe? What did they tell you about the importance of having you all there with them, standing, so to speak? We were continuously welcomed. It was really fascinating because I started when we first arrived. I would say there was, and this is an approximation, about 2,000 people. On Sunday, I would say that they were estimating that there was about 15,000 people. When you look out over the horizon at the many different faces, it appeared that there were a lot of non-native faces. Mm-hmm.
And so we were there and we did interviews with all different kinds of people, and we had the opportunity to talk to elders. And in that moment when it was announced, the decision about the permit, the elder said, thank you all for being here. We could not do this without you. So this continuous welcoming, please pray with us, please be with us. It was like nothing that I had experienced.
Tomas, you mentioned a press conference on Monday, and that's going to take place at the Center for Civil and Human Rights. What's that going to be all about?
Yeah, the idea is to really give voice to the Native American people. And so it's not our voice. It's great to have this opportunity here today. But I really want to draw your attention and to the listeners' attention to this press conference. And it's an open event where we have Native Americans coming from the Dakotas, where we have Shabon, who is our Native American coordinator, to speak on behalf not only, but as Native American peoples. And it's for us always very important. And this is a lesson learned in mission, that we have to listen and that we have to strengthen and empower the voice of the people.
And you consider Standing Rock maybe to be the catalyst for the strengthening of the voice of Indigenous and Native American people. Is this a turning point?
I'm not sure whether it's a turning point, but it's a great opportunity for the Native Americans to speak up and to find and have a voice in the United States. Yes.
Mary, your thoughts. Is this a turning point for people's understanding of Indigenous and Native American people?
I think it has the possibility of being a turning point. I've been trying to figure out how to articulate my experience, and I've started naming it a Kairos Moment, meaning that opportunities have aligned and something perhaps has shifted in the course of history. Now, will we take advantage of that? Will we, as one of our wonderful guests has shared with me, will we not only speak our truth, but will we start to live our truth? That will be the question that remains.
What about you personally? Was there a moment that you would say was a turning point at Standing Rock in your own life?
I would say it was the moment on Sunday. The moment on Sunday, standing there together and realizing that we are all one and feeling it.
And in terms of feeling that and keeping that momentum, this isn't over, apparently, so you all go back if need be.
Yes.
Tomas?
Yes, definitely. And we are also looking at possible long-term projects around water and sanitation with the tribes in the region.
What does that look like? You said long-term projects.
Long-term project would be that we are supporting and granting to partners here and around the world in projects around water, sanitation, and we are looking, and we haven't got the right answer yet, but we are in conversation what that could look like in the Dakotas.
And what's next for the pipeline? Where do we stand?
My understanding is that EPA study, and I believe that there is a deadline, January 1st, that if the oil is not flowing through the pipeline, then suppliers have an opportunity to renegotiate the contract.
Our guests have been Mary Andreolli, Executive Director of Communications for Global Ministries, and Thomas Kemper. He's the General Secretary of the United Methodist Church's General Board of Global Ministries. Special thanks to both of you all for coming in. We appreciate your stories.
Thank you.
Thank you.